To discuss this, we're joined by Global Affairs Analyst Kelvin Dark. Thank you for joining us on the news.
Good to be here.
It's been 29 years. How would you appraise the handling of issues around the 1994 massacre?
Well, I think that that's definitely a complicated report card. I think in some ways, especially when it comes to bringing about awareness of what happened and the reasons why, I think that's something that the international community, has done. I think that the international community, like you were just talking about in France, is doing more to make sure that we remember what happened. That obviously came a lot later in the 29 years. Now, when it comes to the real systemic changes, what's happening in Rwanda and how the international community can help prevent these types of instances in the future, that remains to be seen. I think that one of the things that really kind of hit me this year is I thought that the remarks from the UN Secretary General were extremely on point, where he said that hate speech turns to hate crimes. And that's something that isn't just applicable in Rwanda, but that is applicable all around the world, including in my country here in the United States.
An estimated 101,000 children live in some 42,000 child-headed households, either because their parents were killed in a genocide, or they died from AIDS, or they were imprisoned for genocide-related crimes. For these children, the genocide, like it or not, is not just a historical event, but an inescapable part of their daily life today and tomorrow. So my question now would be, what do you think the government and those accused of perpetrating these crimes have done? And do you think that is enough to ensure healing for these ones?
I think it's very important, and that's something that, I was kind of wrestling with the remarks from President Kagame, where, he talks about not being defined by this. And I definitely understand where that's coming from, because this tragedy should not completely define Rwanda or its people. However, as you mentioned, this is not just history. It's something that children, young people are living the consequences out daily. And so I think what the Rwandan government needs to do is make that balance, to make sure that these particular young people know that they don't have to be defined by this tragedy, yet the government has to recognize that it still affects people. And so those systems need to be changed. Those things that need to be done to give the victims and their families confidence that this won't happen again, that needs to be stepped up.
Accountability for sure is part of the justice process. What role do you think the international community can play to hold perpetrators accountable and restore the dignity of victims living with the scars of the genocide?
I think that one of the main things that the international community can do, and specifically the United States, is to continue to plead the case for political prisoners, those who may be held for political reasons, to make sure that Rwanda and the United States have a good relationship. Rwanda's relationship with the U.S. compared to its size in Africa, a lot of people here say it punches above its weight. I think that the United States has an obligation to make sure that the persecution of political dissidents and opposition doesn't continue, because, as the Secretary General said, that's what leads sometimes to these hate crimes. So I think that's one thing that for sure the U.S. and the international community can do.
Let's flip back a little to what the French presidency say they want to do. They want to build a memorial for the victims. And you seem to find this rather interesting, or, one step in the direction that a lot of persons are looking to. But how really significant is a memorial?
The memorial can be significant if, and I say this a very strong if, it is representative of what the French government is doing, to uncover questions maybe from the past, to make sure that their relationship with Rwanda going forward doesn't contain those same elements that contributed to what happened in Rwanda, that contributed to not being as and condemnation as they should have been. So the memorial by itself is a gesture. The memorial, if it represents true actions and change, is a very powerful statement.
This happened in Rwanda. You talked about hate crime, hate speech may lead to hate crime. But expanding it beyond Rwanda at this point, do you think the world, Africa in particular, took any lessons out of the Rwandan genocide experience to prevent any such event from reoccurring?
I think that lessons have been taken. I think that given the enormity of the tragedy, it can't be ignored. It can't be forgotten. I think the challenge is going to be for people all around the world, and specifically in African countries, to not only recognize what happened, to not only remember it, but then to look and see in their own societies and countries, what are the things that are happening? What are the attacks on our system that are similar to what we saw in Rwanda? Hate speech, for example, ethnic divisions. What are the things in their countries that are kind of a precursor to something as tragic that could happen? If people pay attention to those and address those before they become tragedies, then the lessons learned were worth it. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done for that to be true.
Kelvin, thank you very much for speaking with us here at News Central.
Thank you.